3 sentences. That is all it took to flip my whole day upside down. I took my kids to a park minding my own business, and a cop decided I didn't belong there. By the time the handcuffs clicked, my children were crying, and half the park was filming me like I'd done something wrong. Yeah, that happened. My name's Talia Brooks, and I want to tell you about the day I learned how thin the line is between normal Saturday and public spectacle, and why I stayed quiet longer than most people think I should have. It started like any other weekend, you know what I mean? Juice boxes rolling around the back seat, my twins arguing about which song to play, the kind of chaos that feels annoying and precious at the same time. Cedar Ridge Commons was one of those picture-perfect parks, trimmed grass, shiny new benches, families who look like they stepped out of a real estate brochure. I laid out our blanket, passed out sandwiches, watched Milo and Shay race toward the playground, and for a moment, I let myself breathe. And then I felt it, that stare you don't forget once you've felt it enough times. I looked up and saw a patrol SUV moving slow, real slow, like the driver was deciding something. Officer Trent Rask. I didn't know his name yet, but I knew the posture, the squared shoulders, the look that says I've already made up my mind. He circled once, twice, and parked. No greeting, no small talk, just ma'am, stand up. I smiled because that's what you learn to do, keep it calm, keep it polite, especially with your kids watching. I told him we were just having lunch. He said they'd gotten a call about a suspicious woman taking pictures of children. I almost laughed because my kids were right there, dirt on their knees, yelling my name every 5 seconds. I told him those were my kids. He didn't even look. He asked about my phone. I offered it to him. He didn't take it. Behind him was a younger officer, Officer Shore, shifting his weight, clearly uncomfortable, like he already knew this wasn't right. He tried to step in, said it was a public park, people use their phones all the time. Rask shut him down fast. Then a woman nearby stepped forward, pointed at me, and said she was the one who called, that I'd been photographing her son. I hadn't even noticed her before that moment. The lie came out so easily it was almost impressive. Rask asked for my ID. Clean record, no issues, nothing. That should have been the end. Instead, he told me to open my bag. I asked why. He said because he said so. Shore tried again, said there was no probable cause. Rask snapped at him, told him to stand down. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about safety, it was about control. My phone rang, screen flashing my boss's name. Rask reached for it, said I could call back from the station. And before I could even process what was happening, he told me to turn around. The cuffs were cold, loud, final. My kids heard it and froze. Milo's voice cracked when he said Mom and Shay started sobbing like her world had just broken. My phone slipped and shattered on the pavement. People stared. Phones came out. Nobody moved, except an older black woman who walked over and took my kids into her arms like she'd done it 100 times before. I sat on the curb, hands cuffed behind me, breathing slow because panic would have made it worse. Rask called me a suspect over his radio. Suspect. For eating lunch. And while all this was happening, I looked toward the parking lot and saw 3 dark SUVs rolling in smooth, quiet, deliberate, and I started counting in my head, because I knew what was coming, and I knew Rask had no idea who he'd just arrested. Here's the part people always ask about later, the part they judge the most. Why didn't I just say who I was? Why didn't I end it right there? The truth is, I wasn't just a mom at the park. I was the lead on a federal integrity case that had been building for 8 months. The park wasn't random. It was a meeting spot for a developer named Wade Larkin, a man who'd been skimming contracts and paying off people who were supposed to stop him. My team was scattered all over that park, pretending to jog red, sell ice cream, waiting for the handoff we needed to lock the case. And I've been pulled over, questioned, followed enough times in my life to know that flashing a badge doesn't always make things safer, especially with your kids there. I also knew every second Rask pushed without cause was being recorded by civilians, by his own body cam, by my team's equipment. Evidence. Real evidence. So I stayed calm. I swallowed the anger. I swallowed the humiliation. I let him keep digging. My earpiece crackled, my second in command asking if I wanted them to shut it down. I mouthed, "Hold." Officer Shore crouched next to me, voice shaking, apologized, asked if there was someone he could call. I told him to call my boss, give her my location, nothing else. He did it, hands trembling, and stood up like he'd just crossed a line he couldn't uncross. Across the park, right on schedule, Larkin met his lawyer and passed an envelope like it was nothing. My team got it all. The operation was still alive. Meanwhile, the crowd grew, chanting started, and Rask got angrier with every phone pointed at him. He grabbed my arm and said he was putting me in the car. That's when Shay broke free and ran toward me crying, and another officer grabbed her arm, not hard but enough. Something snapped in me. My voice dropped sharp and steady, and I told him to take his hand off my child. He froze. Authority doesn't always come from a uniform. Sometimes it comes from certainty. And then the SUVs parked. Doors opened in sync. 8 people stepped out like they owned the moment. The chanting stopped. My agent spoke once, calm and clear, told Rask to step away and remove the cuffs. Rask tried to argue, tried to puff up until credentials were in his face and a countdown started. His hands shook when he unlocked the cuffs. I stood up, rubbed my wrists, and looked at him. Not angry, not loud, just present. Shore stepped forward and said he'd verified it, that he'd called my supervisor. Rask looked betrayed. I turned to my team and told them to secure the scene, collect footage, detain the woman who'd lied. She tried to leave and was stopped cold. The helicopter came next, my supervisor stepping out with prosecutors in tow, eyes taking everything in. She addressed the crowd, said this happens every day without cameras or consequences, then turned to Rask and put him on administrative leave pending investigation. He said he didn't know. I told him he didn't know I was important, and that was the problem. He said I should have identified myself. I told him I wasn't committing a crime. Behind us, the message came through. Larkin was in custody, the case was done, and still the thing that would live forever was my son asking me why the police hurt me. I didn't have a clean answer. I told him sometimes people forget what their job is, but we were safe now. The video went everywhere after that. Millions of views, arguments in every direction. Some people said justice worked. Others said it only worked because I had a badge. Both can be true. Rask got investigated. The department got reviewed. Old cases reopened. The woman who lied got charged. Officer Shore testified, took heat, and eventually applied to work with us. I wrote his recommendation. And me, I went back to work because that's what you do when your pain becomes content. But here's the part that should make you uncomfortable because it makes me uncomfortable. If I hadn't been federal, if those SUVs hadn't rolled in, if my boss hadn't flown in, would I have gone home that day? Or would I have been another name on a report, another suspect who didn't fight back hard enough? That's the real ending, the one that doesn't wrap up clean. So I want to ask you something, and I want you to be honest in the comments. Was that officer protecting the community or protecting his ego? Was that woman being cautious or weaponizing fear? And have you ever seen someone judged, targeted, or punished just for being in the wrong place in someone else's mind? Share your story challenge. Mine, disagree if you need to, but don't look away because the conversation doesn't end when the video cuts off. It starts there.